It's not appropriate for me to start this one with the peace greeting, but shouts out to S Jacques for coming through on the Cash App and for uh, bringing this to my attention. Um, Celebrities are not our leaders; they're not our role models. But celebrities are sort of like canaries in a coal mine. They're like a litmus test for us. Celebrities um, can expose certain things that go on in our lives as regular people. They're examples for everybody. Um, Media takeout is blocked here, and I um, had to find another source through which to find out about August Alsina um, sort of coming out for the second time is because he said something about this a long time ago. But having him talk about coming out as having a boyfriend and being interested in a man. The issue I take with this is that August um, August was able to get up in the guts of a married woman, certainly old enough to be his mom because it's his friend's mom. And she apparently had no sort of gaydar. Now, sisters will tell you about how strong they are, how powerful they are. And they want you to know that you only get as far with them as they say. They want you to know how reliant you are on their consent and their permission. But they also want you to know that they can read you like an open book, that you can't hide nothing from them. They can see right through you and they can see right to whatever the hell it is that you don't want everybody to know. They do this and then they tell you that they've got this effective gaydar. And the gaydar is so strong that they're out here diagnosing straight men as gay. Ask me how I know. A lot of you that are straight have had some sister somewhere, especially if you're just not a stereotype. There's some sister somewhere that sat up here and said that you're not AY. You don't tote a pistol, you don't drag your knuckles, you don't slang, you don't bang, you don't do these stereotypical things out on the street. You not AY. But you're not. So many of us have had this diagnosis, so to speak, a false diagnosis, a false positive, if you will, on some sister's gaydar. And then later on, somebody they were with winds up actually being 9AY, not interested in women and interested in men, or maybe swinging both ways. I don't understand it, and I'm not interested in um, understanding it. I'm not trying to sympathize. Our sistren really they're only sisters to each other. And it's to the point that they're boasting and they're bragging and they're even supporting those who publicly embarrassed them. You see, Jada was supposed to be a public embarrassment to sisters, but they didn't feel embarrassed. Notice. There was no sense of embarrassment on the part of sisters. What did they start doing? They started saying, the biggest issue with Jada and August is that Breonna Taylor's killers are still free. They kept trying to deflect. And granted, that is a major issue, but so too is infidelity in the homes of Black married couples. And whatever the rumors are about them having an open marriage and whatever time they'd been separated before she was with August, the fact is that there was some sort of understanding that she must have broken, because otherwise Will wouldn't have just been hurt for nothing. And notice the expectation. You notice that expectation, even with this separation. She looks at Will to protect her honor when she feels embarrassed because of a comedian's joke about her baldness that she's very voluntary. Ain't no alopecia. He's still supposed to protect her honor that she gave up when she not only screwed her son's friend, but then said, "Yeah, I did it, and it's an entanglement." And oh, you don't need to get me back. That man said, "I'm going to get you back." And she said, "You don't need to get me back. I don't think that's necessary." All she has done is be an example of Black female unaccountability and shamelessness. That's all she has done. Just diss and undermine the man that did at least take those vows and seems to have taken them seriously. Threw her a hell of a bash for her birthday, and she sat up there and said that was selfish. That was all about you. While her mother lives in his house. Accountability commentary would probably look at someone like me and say that I am insincere or a faker, or that I'm not hard enough in the paint. I mean, I am happily married to an East African woman. I get on her about some things. I tease her about some things that are not really that big an issue. And then I get on her about some things that are quite irritating. And yet, at the end of the day, I have a hell of a lot more compliments to give her. And I'm happy. And I'm stuck on her. But I understand that a lot of brothers ain't never going to find that, no matter which side of the Atlantic they perform their search. They're brothers that ain't going to find nobody like her on the continent, in the Caribbean, or in the Carolinas. It doesn't make a difference. They will not find it. Some brothers can even go to Colombia and they can't find it, because they'll find that some of the Afro Colombians are very proud, but some of the other African Colombians really don't even like brothers because they want to stop being African. And some of them are going to go to Brazil and find the same thing. And there's nothing they can do. They're stuck where they are. It's not fair, but that's what it is. And so they're going to have to look outside the race. It's not an option. I don't tell you that you can't find a good black woman somewhere on the planet, but what I'm telling you is that you probably will not find her when you're young enough. You probably will not find her in time enough. And truth be told, one of the problems with sisters, regardless of location or nationality, is that good black women are taught to stay at home and to not make themselves known and available, to not actively seek out someone. The better a catch a woman is, the more the women and the men around her who love her tell her to sit and wait. And that's why many of them wind up wasting their youth. Quite a few of them wind up single forever. I just told, don't make an effort. Don't try to actually compete to get a man. The sisters are telling me this because they can't compete with her if she does decide to compete. And the men are telling her this because these simp ass niggas have been so brainwashed to think that their manhood is worth nothing, worth less, and worthless that they think that's what it's supposed to be. You a good woman. You don't need to be out here trying to find nobody because they don't know how to process the actual existence of good women trying to get a good man. Even the Muslims, despite the story of Khadija bint Khuwailid, despite her story, they don't know how to process the reality of it on the ground. Why would a woman like Khadija do this to get a man, even like Muhammad? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And mind you, turns out that there's just like there's actually more evidence that Aisha was grown when she married him than there is that to support the other narrative. And that's what I believe. There's also evidence that Khadija was 3 years older than him, 28, not 25. I mean, not 40. He was 25, but that she was 28 and not 40. She didn't wait till she was 40 to be able to push. That's even more powerful if that's true, because that means that she didn't have to wait till she was 40 to be able to appreciate a man as good as Muhammad with his character without having the money. If that's true, that's an even stronger and a more difficult example for the modern day woman, Muslim or not, to follow to get her man. And that's when she's a good woman. You ain't gonna see that. And you damn sure ain't gonna see that. Let's be honest. When it comes to that, you are more likely to find that in a European woman, Eastern or Western, than you are to find that in a black woman of any nationality. Beautiful, successful, and then goes to get her man, and he ain't got much. Yeah. I understand why AC says what he says. See, when you got these sisters that are out here acting like they've got this gaydar that never fails, and then they're out here lying around, you end up with a situation like what you have in Houston, where they're spreading that gangster, that virus. Now, from what I've read, if I remember correctly, two cities, Memphis and Baton Rouge, um, lead in HIV amongst African Americans. I don't remember if Atlanta has a Houston beat or not. I actually I don't I can't say I don't remember. I actually never knew that. But what I can tell you is that growing up along the Gulf Coast, we have been knowing for a while that Baton Rouge was leading, that it was worse than New Orleans. We've been knowing that. And I went to Morehouse with a cat from Memphis. He was a year younger than me. Nickname was Trey. I never asked his real name, but he was the third, same name as his dad and granddad. So his nickname was Trey, of course. And let me tell you this. He told us back in the 90s about how he worked at a clinic during one of the breaks. And he did it um, just for one of the breaks, but that it gave him a hell of a perspective. He said that he saw the looks in people's faces breaking down, crying when they got that death sentence back then. Back then, it definitely was. They could barely even halt its progression through your immune system over time. Any treatments they did have back then were prohibitively expensive. This man said, yes. Back then, he said, yes, we got to tell them this, and they know that it's a death sentence. They know their lives are over. That's what I want you to understand. I later on had the opportunity to see a screenshot of something that a lady said um, on social media. And she described the joy she felt when she gave the virus to other men. These men thought that this was one of those rare opportunities to get some, and it came at a cost. That was the cost. So when I tell you, gentlemen, to say no to fornication and to vet for marriage, but to marry 2, 3, or 4, that's one of the reasons I tell you this. There is always a trap. It's always there. It's always something. Always some kind of cost. Jada probably didn't give a disease to August. He was, as far as we know, he's already had an autoimmune disease that messes with his nervous system and liver. But there was still a cost. And what was that? So at some point, she cut it off. And no, it wasn't with Will Smith's blessing. He probably thought that was, but it wasn't. And of course, I'm sure that put an end to his friendship uh, with Jada. And the thing is, I don't know what it did to his head. I'm not really sure. I really don't know. But I tell you all to leave that stuff alone because um, even when they they don't have some sort of trap for you right then and there, there's someone else they're not supposed to be cheating on. That's the other thing. But I also tell you all to turn down these Westernishas, and that's going to be a lot of sisters on the continent too, because they're westernized. I tell you to turn them down because one trap that they tend to want, if they can get it, is that they tend to want to reproduce if you don't. And if you want kids, then they kill your kids. It's one of the two. That's the other thing. They reproductively make whatever decision you don't want them to make. Keep that in mind. Why is it that Rome on Average Man Unplugged and Unplugged Traveler wanted a woman to keep and deliver his kid, so she didn't do it, but other men were not trying to have kids and not trying to become dads, and these women kept the babies and delivered them? What is the reason that each man has an experience with whatever it is that they didn't want? Because you didn't want it. That's one of the traps. But when they take your seed and they carry your seed to term and deliver your baby, which usually means you told them to go ahead and don't do that, probably told them you didn't want to conceive in the first place, and they did. Do you know what happens after that? They get busy, being a single mom so she can brag about how she does it all by herself, whether she does or not, whether you have to pay support or not. She's going to do that because, the hyena clan only validates those stories. And then at some point, because you're not supposed to be in the picture in most cases, you know what happens next? Some predator victimizes, especially if you have a son, so that your son winds up like Saucy Santana. See, they talk about how they have this gaydar and they can see right through you and they can read you. But when their own sons are being abused and victimized, they may know, they may not. I don't blame them for not being psychic. I just wish they'd be honest and admit that they're not psychic. They don't have some spiritual gift of a third eye where they can see right through you. Saucy Santana's mom didn't know what a cousin of his was doing until another cousin went ahead and told the family. From what he said, she found out what the rest of the family. I've been saying this. I've been saying that sort of thing is not natural. That preference is not natural. So what that means is that something has to occur to damage someone's mind. One level of damage is that it changes a boy's preference. Another level of damage that it changes a boy's gender identity. Makeup, fake eyelashes, fake nails, women's clothes, and a beard. Or wigs, makeup, a dress, and a goatee. What is that? It takes some serious damage. And Saucy said it. Saucy's mom said it, and Saucy confirmed it. And to be honest with you, there are a lot of sisters that love that sort of thing and they actually think it's cute. That's one of the other traps. Why do you think that they love to listen to Fleece Johnson's stories? They're not just trying to learn as a lesson. He's teaching it as a lesson, despite the fact that he's been into, well, I mean, he tells you what he was into when he was locked up. Despite the fact that he was into that, he tells you as a lesson. That's why he tells you. But the ladies are listening and the interviews and interviewing him even, and they are listening to this as entertainment. That's why they like getting these jobs as corrections officers and male lockups anyway. They love just being desired so much. But they also love seeing to what some dudes resort when they can't get access to them. Even though even in lockup, most dudes don't do it, it's a few. They still love seeing that there's some dude somewhere locked up that'll resort to that because she won't say yes. And he can't leave to go find another chick. That's what this comes down to. What I'm telling you is that they want you sexually warped and screwed up. And I'm not going to sit up here and count homosexuality as something normal. It's a deviance. It comes usually after some sort of damage. And if they can, they will damage that very thing about you. They like doing that for some odd reason. Sometimes they don't know what's going on, but other times they just don't fib a guck. They so hate the thought of you finding heterosexual satisfaction that every time they're willing to engage in that with you, the natural arrangement, there's a trap to it. There's always, they take joy in something not being right with you. They take joy in being too big for your taste. They like that because they know that's not what you like. They'll say some man like it, black man like them thick. If that was really, I mean, if you really liked them obese, they lose weight. If you liked them obese, they would lose weight and then tell you no. The fact that when they're bigger, they're easier to get romantically and in bed is because they know that that's not really what you're into. You may like them shaped like a woman, but when they're not obese and they're just shapely like a woman, they're always about telling you no, not because of reasons of chastity, like I'm telling you to say no. And when you go to the continent and they're not obese, but they got them big old round rear ends like you like, and they're not obese, they get attitude. Just by virtue of being attractive from the neck up or from the neck down. Either one, even in the continent, they got attitudes. I've seen that with my own eyes. And even on the continent, if they're nice to look at and they're willing to give you a shot, especially sexually, guess what? They got a husband, or they got a boyfriend, or they got kids. It's something. It's even at times coming out of West Africa, I've seen that. Now, I've seen where they've oftentimes been more polite. But when I look back, it jarred my memory. I've seen that too. And that's a disgrace to the women back home on the continent that don't act this way and don't have an ulterior motive and just want to be good wives to a husband they can love that loves them. That's all they want. That it's a disgrace to them because, like I said, those women are taught, well, because you are good and you are a good catch, you don't try to get your own man. You don't compete. You don't show a man that you actually want to marry him. And that leaves men in general open to the exact same situations on the continent as what you're facing in the Americas. The bad ones will come to you. They're available. You can meet them happenstance. You can just be out and about shopping and meet them. They may even come and seek you out now because the economy's hard, because they got kids, or because there's a trap. They got a virus they want to give you, or they want to set you up to rob you, something like that. Them brothers back on the continent are facing the same thing at times. And you can tell that the mentality's there in other parts of the diaspora and in the continent. You know how I can tell that it's there? It's real simple. I saw a dance hall video a long time ago. I think the artist's name was Chris Martin. Years ago, I saw it. And in that, there's this lady dressed up like she's going to carnival. I don't know if she's supposed to be depicting the Brazilian carnival or one of the Caribbean versions of it. It doesn't matter. She's walking along some street and she uh, beacons him with her finger. Come here, come here. And he starts to walk towards her. That is a psychology that many brothers have. Don't be difficult. Don't say no. Don't look around and see what's going on. But yet and still, what is it that a lot of sisters do when they are nice to look at and they call you over? What is it that they generally do? They then work with some dudes to rob you. That's common. I mean, how many brothers got robbed doing Freaknik? The Freaknik of 95, let's see, 94, 95, and 96. Look at those Freakniks. How many brothers got robbed? I remember saying to some of my classmates, if a nice looking chick calls you over, you got to look around and see what you're being set up for. You got to be pessimistic when you're dealing with these broads. That's why I'm as pessimistic as I am. And one dude said, I actually saw that. Everybody else said, man, Black, you crazy. I'm crazy. I never got robbed, but I'm crazy though. And this one cat, I remember it was funny because his name was Abdullah, not Abdullah, but Abdullah. And he was a born again Christian. I didn't put it all together at that time. But he said, I know because I saw that there was this crew that was doing that. She was just pulling guys out the crowd and saying, hey, come with me. And then every time she opened that door and then closed it, nobody came out. And I just sat at a distance and watched as much as I could see through the crowd. And she had her dudes in there that were tying up guys and just robbing them, taking all their stuff. And they were getting out with their underwear and their t-shirts on. They were taking the clothes, the shoes, the money out the wallets, jewelry. They got out later when it was all said and done in some truck that they had rented. That's what these chicks out here doing, man. And I also remember this one time where I was listening to some things that white supremacists would say. They had some of their little videos up on YouTube years ago, and I remember this one man said Africa, and he didn't specify which part. He didn't say which part of Africa he was talking about, but I do think it was either the middle or the west of the continent. But this man said that one of the things he found appalling when he had to go and work in Africa, he was part of some organization that was trying to help stop the spread of HIV at one time by curbing prostitution. And so what they were trying to do is they were trying to increase access to prophylactics as well as encourage marriage, family planning. And he said that when he gave classes, he got tired of some women he got tired of some of the women there raising a hand and saying, well, why would I have sex with a man if I'm not going to get paid? Like they had no concept of sex that wasn't transactional, married or not. He said that he got sick and tired of even some of the women that were married and they would refuse their husbands unless he paid them each and every time. He got sick and tired of this. And I remembered it just now. When I thought about, because S Jacques brought it to my attention, when I thought about what AC had been saying. You brothers in a situation in which it's not even an option anymore to stick within the race. Not because there's no good black woman at all. Now, AC would tell you they're all the same. That's it. They're all the same. That's not mathematically possible for them all to be the same. But what I can tell you is that because of the cultures that we have, not one culture, but despite the variety of cultures of black folks around the planet, one of the things that seems to be a problem all too often is that when a black woman is good and she looks good, she is told that she should not make the slightest effort to find a good man. And what that does is that sets her up to pick the wrong guy too and become one of his victims. Then she ain't so good no more because, well, she gonna be looking to hurt the next man. And I'm gonna give a shout out to Long Handled Spoon as well for a particular reason. He also said in a 7-minute video, I forgot the name of it, sorry about that, but he also said something. He made a reference in there to how sisters never want to go back in time to get a man from their past and treat him better. That's never one of the things they regret. They never say, I should have treated that man better. I wish I treated him better. They always wish they could go back in time to undo anything nice they did for any of their exes because they feel like since it didn't work out, any niceness, any kindness was too much for him. And he talked about how it is that they, even in their social circles, only get approval for being mean to men and get disapproval for being nice to men. They always wish they could go back and undo the kindness to their exes and be meaner to them. And since they can't go back, the next guy is going to get it. This is what you're looking at. Whether you look in the Americas or you look in the continent. Now understand why it is that it was Stephanie Riberos. They got that phone call from that African-American man, and she took it to the next level to get Austin Holloman run out. It wasn't because Austin Holloman was a misogynist. Now, could he have played it differently? Yeah, he could have, but that's hindsight. But when you think about it, it was not a white Brazilian feminist that called the attack dogs on Austin Holloman. No, it wasn't. It was a black brasilera living in the U.S. with her zaddy husband. And I had to stop and think about it. How much of that feminist influence was from the States, but how much of it was also simply because she's a nice looking sister coming out of the Americas. And even the East African lady, I think her name was Kiwa, even her, if I maybe I'm getting her name wrong, but even Kiwa was talking to her mom about how to use Austin. That's something that I learned from Travel Time with Paul. And I don't think Travel Time with Paul gets along with any of them, but he didn't seem to have a reason to make that up. And when he stated that, he was not happy about it. He was actually not happy about that. So he didn't seem to have a reason to lie about that. He was unhappy about that woman trying to do this to Austin. So sometimes people say, well, women are women all over the planet. And while that might be true, the fact is that that is starting to really seem to be the case more obviously within our race. Seems like that. And I'll tell you, brothers, man, I'll tell you that if you were going to try to go to some other part of the world and run up in a bunch of different women's guts trying to get your body counts up to make up for whatever it is that uh, Western sisters made you feel was inadequate about yourself because of the body counts they had that you don't, I'm telling you, the paradox with that is that the women who would probably deserve treatment like that, even though you shouldn't do it, are the ones that give you the hardest time. And they don't give you the hardest time because they're chaste. They give you the hardest time because they're just mean and they look down on you and they think that you always deserve some sort of trap or some sort of hidden price or some sort of punishment just for the satisfaction you might feel. Not because it's fornication and it's wrong, but because it's heterosex and that's natural and you just don't deserve that. It's funny because sometimes brothers go to these areas where the women don't hate or like you particularly that much. It's just um, something to do or a way to earn a living and maybe have some fun while they're doing it. It's just that. And that's where some of you brothers wind up going to play catch up. Those women in the DR, I don't think they love or hate you. They probably, yeah, I don't think that they do. Either way, really. And that's where a lot of you brothers go. Colombia, I think they hate you. That's why there's so much scoping going on. Even, yeah, I think they dislike you the way that strippers and women who sell box in the U.S. dislike men. They have a low opinion of men, generally speaking, because they get the men that are willing to pay for the box. And I think that the women in Colombia have the same opinion, regardless of their race. A lot of you guys go to Pattaya, and Pattaya, I mean, you got to understand, Pattaya is pretty much a big brothel now. Let's call that what it is. And so when you go to Pattaya, the women that are not about that stuff are not going to come to you. And I don't think that's because you're black per se. It probably just has more to do with the fact that they don't see any foreign man as being in Pattaya for any reason other than that. They don't know which foreign man is here in Pattaya for some reason other than buying the box, paying to play. How the hell would we know? We don't know which one is here for another reason, which one is here just to pay to play. So, you know what? We'll just assume they all are to keep ourselves safe. Those are the women I'm talking about that are not involved in that business. If they're not involved in that business, they have something to lose. They got something to protect. And in order to protect that, they're going to sit up and just write you off. Friend zone you at best. They don't have to hate you. The women that are involved in that sort of lifestyle, I don't think they hate you. They're not at war with you. And so therefore, why would you sit up and utilize them that way trying to play catch up? But the notion that you need to play catch up in the first mother cuss word place is a notion that many of us get from sisters. In the West, and I think also coming out the continent too, because I've realized that women out the continent will also diminutize an inexperienced man like there's something wrong with him. I realize that. They'll do that in the US, we already know that. But they'll do it in Jamaica. They'll do it in Barbados. They'll do it in Antigua and Barbuda. They'll do it in Royal Turks and Caicos. They'll do it in the Bahamas. I'm not sure about the Francophone Caribbean. They probably will. I know they'll do it in Luanda. I know they'll do it in South Africa in general. I'm sure they'll do it in Namibia. I know they'll do it in Liberia. Southern Ghana and Southern Nigeria, I bet you money they do it, which means that in Central Nigeria, they probably would do the same thing. And the way that some of these northern Nigerian women are beginning to act, I think they're going to start doing that same thing too, ridiculing men for the lack of experience. And I just let y'all know straight up. I just tell y'all straight up, man. If they're going to act like that in northern Nigeria, I will take back what I said years ago and will tell you that it has changed. Don't even go there looking. Not even if they start that stuff. I'm not sure yet, but I'm keeping my ear to the ground. If they start that, don't even start looking there. They're already developing an attitude problem towards polygyny. But you know how it is with sisters. Sisters don't want inexperienced men either. So, I'm gonna tell y'all straight away, man. That might mean that you have to write off the continent. And I think it's gonna get to that point. I really do. I hate to say it, but I think it will. And the day that Arab women start ridiculing inexperienced men as well, I'm gonna tell y'all. If I find out that's what they do, I'm gonna tell y'all. I'm gonna say they do that same thing. Stay away from them. You don't want them. I'll tell y'all in a heartbeat. And what's the reason? Simply put, because that right there already means that you cannot be with them. That's what that means. And when any group of women start to do that to their own men, that's it. The next step is to do this to men in general. But when they start doing this with their own men, they already can't be with their own men. That's a group of people that are not going to marry each other anymore. Chinese women will do that with Chinese men. And you already know Chinese men are now starting to look at foreign women. And Chinese women who get above a certain age are losing to foreign women. We already know about that. BGS covered that. Shouts out to them for doing that. Yeah, guess what else? We already know American women in general will do that to any man. They'll make fun of him for being inexperienced. Look down on him for it. Who wants American women now? Nobody. You're seeing that. You're seeing them panic. They don't even have to really hit the wall. They're starting to panic because the wall is a lot earlier for them. It's like the fact that they're American already it brings them 3 years closer to the wall, even in the eyes of American men. And then the fact that they're not willing to go after the men brings them another 2 years closer. A lot of chicks that were, remember, a lot of chicks that were 25 back in 2020, now they 39 or 29 and 30. Yeah, they lost that. Set them back. That accelerated them another 5 years. Add to that the fact that they're American and they don't pursue men, especially responsible men. So they done already hit the wall. They hit the wall back then in 2020. They were 25 and they hit the wall. They just didn't know it was the wall. They didn't know it was permanent. I didn't know. You didn't know. But now we do. Now we know 25, wall, that just like that. That's the end of it. So they're doing this to their own men, but they're also doing this to men in general. But then you got some women that really do this more so to their own men, but not to others. Those women might have a hope, just not with their own men. But the next step is that they start doing like American women and just looking down on any inexperienced men, period, and then nobody wants them. No one does. They just lose. And it's actually fairly, is more common than what we think for women to really judge their own men that harshly. So there are going to be many people on the planet that just can't marry their own kind anymore. We're not going to be the only ones. But what is different about us is that we might be the first ones to have to refuse on the basis of race because of culture, not on the basis of culture. Because you see, in Asia, Chinese men marry Vietnamese women. You could argue they're the same race, but different nationalities, cultures, and languages. You could argue that. Whereas amongst us, it may be that brothers have to start looking at specifically non-black women racially because of what the cultures share in common when it comes to harsh judgments of men. That might be the difference. Because all Asian cultures don't have these hyper harsh judgments of their men. Whereas too many African cultures, too many black folks' cultures have these hyper harsh judgments of black men. Yeah. The difference is that every time some Asian man gets with an Asian woman, it's not always a trap. That's the difference. Meanwhile, just about every time a brother gets with an attractive sister, there's some sort of trap. It's not just a disappointment or the usual finding out that she's not perfect and she's flawed and you deal. No, it's not that. It's like some sort of trap. That's when the difference comes in. Some seriously high price that must be paid. And I'm going to tell you, a man is responsible for the decisions that he makes. But I'm letting y'all know now, if sisters could have their way, as much as they don't like the slim pickings that it leaves them, if sisters in the West could have their way, the American, the Canadian, and the Black British sisters could have their way, they would turn most men 9AY. Jada probably did not turn August Alsina 9AY. I think she helped, but I don't think she turned them that way. But if she could, she would try to do that. And she would try to turn many more that way. How do you know? Simple. Look at Gabrielle Union, who ain't got no kids of her own, and what she's insisting upon doing. Her stepsons, well, actually, I don't know if she has her own, I can't remember if she has her own with her husband or not, but I know that Zion is not um, her son, but she will support Zion becoming Zaya. That's fine. That's okay. But if they had a preference for light skinned women, she was triggered. You see? And they're so entertained. And you notice that when they talk to Fleece Johnson, they're entertained. They're not informed by Fleece, they're entertained by Fleece. The only time they were really, really upset was with Fleece was when he talked about the one time that he got some trim while he was locked up because he managed to get this guard's radio and he wasn't going to give it back to her so she could keep a job till she took his sick inducted. And he also got some trim in the process. But by that point, he liked booty more. And that's probably why them sisters didn't get more upset than what they did. What I'm telling you right now is that you're dealing with a phenomenon which the Western sister, she's a castrating influence and she likes to be, she wants to be. But in general, sisters are trying to become an emasculating influence on black men on the basis of you being black, not your nationality. That's one of the reasons why I tell you that I don't want to sit up and get into these arguments about tethers and FBA and non-FBA. I don't want to sit up and get into divisions and grudges about that because, as I've told you all before, they don't give a guck about each other's nationalities. They just want you and me and other black men at each other's throats. That's all that is. They want Senor Kanga to look down on black Americans and even other nationalities of Africans. That's what they want. But they don't have this with each other. You know what it's like when they get together with each other? The worst nationalities of sisters are the ones that get to be the loudest in the room and teach all the others instead of learning from them. South African women are sisters, South African black women are not sitting up there learning from Mozambican and Zimbabwean and Zambian women how to be traditional and look after your men. They're not learning from them. They're teaching them how to get over on your men, use them, set them up for robbery, stuff like that. Weaponize the law against them. That's what they're teaching them. And high-fiving each other for doing that. Yeah, it's bad. Even in Nigeria, the northern women are not the voice for the southerners to learn how to look after their men. It's not that. No. The southerners get to tell the northerners so that they can ruin them. And even amongst Middle Easterners, that's a problem. You got some of these women sitting up talking about they make some of these videos where they just dancing and they put the headlines in these videos and the headline will say, God made man, man made money, God made woman to eat the man's money. Like what? No, he didn't make the woman just for that purpose. And I believe in a gender roles where the man takes care of the household financially speaking. I also believe she lives within his means. But they sit up and say God made woman just to eat the man's money. That's it. Like you're just there to consume and set him back after he earns, struggles to produce and provide. So believe you me, that we're getting to a point where even more Arab men are going to start looking away from Arab women. We're getting to that point. And some of these Middle Eastern women, although a lot of them are not really into brothers that much, you got more of them. I dare say you got a higher percentage of them that are into brothers than you have white women that are into brothers. I'd say that. You're getting more and more of them that are getting into brothers. They're interested, but the difference is they will actually go after bros. I don't know what the percentage of them that are interested is. I don't know if it's 80% of them that like brothers or 8. I'm not sure, but the ones who do, they will go after brothers. They will try to get with some bros. They'll do their best. But in the meantime, when it comes down to their own Arab men that ain't black, oh man, they smoking in front of them, just deteriorating in front of these men, and they can see it. It's gonna get to the point where they won't touch each other. She doesn't like him, and she doesn't want to be anything he'd see as worthwhile. That's what you're looking at. It's a trap. As far as you and I are concerned right now, that we're dealing with we're dealing with a trap. And the thing is that it winds up actually putting us in a position in which we can tell other men what to expect. That's the funny thing about it. That's why I tell you, go ahead and let these other men know, because we all win. You let these other groups of men know what misandry and feminism is going to turn into, since it's already gotten that way with us. We all win. I wasn't telling you that, trying to tell you to just kiss up to other men of other races, just trying to be buddy-buddy with them just because they're not black. I wasn't telling you that for that reason. I was telling you that because you know what? We win and they win. Because what sisters want right now, and their Wyatt buddies, what they want is for you to have no other alternative. They want you to get off that plane anywhere on the planet, and it'd be the same as if you got off the plane in Baltimore. And you have to deal with the exact same legal system and cultural games that these chicks will play. No good options. They want you to have a choice between being taken for child support and alimony, or getting robbed, or getting a disease because that she wants to pass one along. Or the same things that sisters in the West will offer you, those same bad deals. They want you to have the same menu of nothing but bad deals no matter where you go. That's what they're looking for. And I hope that what I've said helps out to understand that. Thanks for listening as always. And thank you, S Jacques, for bringing this to my attention and coming through on the Cash App too. And thank you, Revelator, for coming through on the Cash App. As always, black heart, black mind, black out, and black patriarchy until extinction of Judgment Day. Black heterosexual non-select male power because they don't like it. And thank you for flying with us again here on Jet Black Airways, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender justice forever.